Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome here at Crypto Hash Review, where we educate and disseminate information about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies for a Muslim perspective. And we are continuing on our series related to discussing and replying to some of the objections mentioned about the Bitcoin network from learned individuals. And one of them, which is a common one, not just by Muslims, but other non-Muslims as well. Basically, what they're saying is, and this is a quote-ish because it's from audio, if someone had a massive computer, like a quantum computer, they can break the system and you lose all your Bitcoin. And governments have computers that can break Bitcoin if they just turn them on. Okay. So this question on this issue, again, demonstrates the need for education about Bitcoin network and how Bitcoin functions and works, so that when people discuss these issues, they discuss things with knowledge and understanding of what's happening. So there's two key systems at play when it comes to the Bitcoin network, as this objection applies to. One of them is the public and private key encryption used to encrypt your wallet. And as you mentioned, we gave an analogy before. We basically have what's called a number, just a random number, any number. You can even look at it. It's not just it's just a number. And this number, which is any number between 1 and 10 to the power of 72, so it's a massive number. And this number is where you hide your loot. That's what we just said. That's your effectively your private keys. So they're saying that either the objection is saying that with this massive quantum computer you can break that and gain access to your private keys, for example, or the other part of the system is what is referred to mining, which in that video that we were discussing, they were actually referring to what's called the 51% hack or 51% attack. So I'll address each one of them specifically, so you can understand what potential risks are involved in the Bitcoin network, if there are risks at all, and how you can break the network according to their objection. So what they're saying is, let's deal with the public-private key situation. So how could I get to your Bitcoin wallet and get access to your money? So first and foremost, if I just get your public-private keys, imagine you write your private keys on a piece of paper, and then I found that piece of paper. No need for a quantum computer, no need for any particular software. I have your keys. So I just put them into my wallet and I have access to your Bitcoin. Straightforward. There's nothing fantastic about it. Okay, I've got my private keys and I got them safely hidden underneath the ground somewhere, yeah? That's now different. Now they're hidden somewhere safe. Okay, then could I use a computer to break my address? Well, the question is, how would you? Remember, we said Bitcoin private keys is like hiding your loot on an atom in the non-universe. So whatever computer you say you have to look in every single atom, search every single atom in the non-universe to see, is it Bitcoin here, is it Bitcoin here, is it Bitcoin here? And you got to do so throughout the whole non-universe. That's essentially what you have to do. Just to give you a scale of what is necessary, what you need to do in order to find your private keys. Again, you need to scan and look at every single atom in the known universe and check each atom. Is there Bitcoin here? Is there Bitcoin here? Is there Bitcoin here? Is there Bitcoin here? It's effectively like saying to you, I want to find Captain Jack Sparrow's hidden treasure, so I have to dig up the whole earth. Now, theoretically, if I had enough people, I could dig up the whole earth and eventually find his loot. But it doesn't mean that it's something that will ever happen or is feasible to happen. It's just something that theoretically could happen. 7.1 billion people. I'm sure if we organize everyone with a shovel, we can get past the whole earth and find out where this loot is. But would that happen? Well, you decide yourself. But then there's another element, there's another layer. Okay, how about this? I have my private keys. From my private keys, I have what's known as a public key. Now, this public key is used to generate these addresses. Yeah, so these addresses that I have, I send out to receive Bitcoin, come from the public key. So what essentially the way you would break someone's account would be theoretically speaking, is to get the address, hack, or not hack, you have to go backwards from the address to the public key, and from backwards from the public key to the private key. Now, to go from private key to the public key, that's all level of encryption. Is something completely different, outside the scope of our discussion. But the point here is, if that were possible, to go backwards from the address to the public key and from public key to the private key, then effectively more than just Bitcoin is a threat. Our whole internet system is highly based on a lot of these encryption algorithms, more specifically the hash 256 algorithm. So that is specifically used in almost all applications, hashing, and effectively you could in theory break that hashing algorithm, which would include breaking all other algorithms, including bank algorithms, including other algorithms. So yes, if it were possible to break Bitcoin network, you would break the internet itself. Like I said to you, Bitcoin was built off of a history of developments that made the internet what it was, including emails and so on and so forth. The other element, referring to mining, and which is what they were actually referring to, was how you find that unique number. If you remember, I said in the previous example, miners, they take all these transactions from people, put into a little block, and then they add onto it a number called a nonce. And this number, when you hash this number, we'll have another video showing what hashing means, but when you hash this number, the end result of this hash looks a certain way. It's absolutely random. There's no way to predict how it will come out. And if it comes out the way he wants, the miner wins the Bitcoin. And if it doesn't come out the way he wants, he has to plug in another number. And it keeps on plugging in numbers, keeps on numbering hash, and it keeps on hashing. He just keeps on guessing all these random numbers, using different numbers for hashes, and sees what comes out. What is the hash number that comes out? If the hash comes out looking a certain way that we want in a Bitcoin network, then we would say that he has won the Bitcoin network, and then his thing. So if a person had a supermassive quantum computer that can do that same calculation that I just described there, millions of times faster than everybody else, all combined, all that they would achieve is to earn more Bitcoin. It doesn't break the network. It just means you get to win more Bitcoin. You earn more Bitcoin. As for the issue of what's called the 51% attack, basically the idea is, if you have miners across the world and they're all scattered and all hashing, all trying to find this number, if you yourself individually are able to have more than 51% of the combined effort of all the computers on planet Earth hashing, then you are more likely, probabilistically, you're more likely to win the next block. So what that means is, if you win the next block, then essentially what you could do, the attack basically means that you could deposit some money. You could mine Bitcoin privately, make these blocks privately, let everyone else continue mining as normal, but you mine privately, and then you end up mining more blocks than anybody else mines. And then when you do release your blocks to the network, you would have released a longer chain. So remember, Bitcoin is a chain of blocks. You would end up having a longer chain of blocks than everyone else, and then the network would adopt your chain because you had the longer chain. The rules are, whoever the longest chain is the correct chain. The correct chain is the one that has the longest chain. And what could you do with that? I mean, what history has shown, it's always been a theoretical attack, and it has been successfully implemented on smaller coins, cryptocurrency coins. But all they've achieved in doing so is something very small. As in, for example, you would what they'll do is they'll deposit some money into an exchange, withdraw that money from the exchange, and then broadcast their chain where they didn't deposit to the exchange. It's like what's called a double spend. And this 51% attack was very real for Bitcoin when it was very young, I mean, like in 2009, 2010. But now we have a collective of all miners across the world, And we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of specialized computers, all trying to guess these numbers. For you to achieve that 51% attack, the amount of money you need to spend to achieve such an attack and pull it off, what would you gain out of it? You want to gain a few extra Bitcoin. You won't actually break the system. It doesn't destroy Bitcoin. It just means that you could potentially, in theory, undo some transactions that you did in that short space of time. That's it. So you won't lose Bitcoin because someone has now got a quantum computer that can hash faster than someone else. The real threat would be, is a genuine threat, is if the public private key encryption algorithm has been broken. And like I said, because that same algorithm has been used for other than Bitcoin, for the whole internet basically, that will mean break the internet, number one. And number two, there are algorithms out there that are quantum computer resistant. Now, again, that's for another video altogether. Just want to keep this one short and brief. But as we've said before, that 99.9% of the objections that have occurred towards Bitcoin has been basically misinformation or misunderstanding of the situation or cryptocurrencies as a whole. We hope you find this video beneficial and useful. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, share any objections or comments you have in the comment section below, and have a nice evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.